Hello everybody, Prepper003 here today with another video topic for you, and this one is going to be bugging in for SHTF. Now I've kind of put off this topic for quite a while just because I've been wanting to do a little bit of studying on it just so I have a little bit of more formal knowledge into it as well, and also a little bit of more working on my bugging in scenario as well. So right now I'm just going to kind of jump into the pros versus cons list of the bugging in for SHTF. The biggest one is going to be that you can know your local environment. Well, whether it be you bugging in inside of a more urban environment or whether it be bugging out in the country, you know your environment very well. You know, especially when it comes to your house, the defenses that you can have for your house, and also for your property if you do have property. And then it goes on to your local neighborhood, if you can start working with your neighbors and building a survival community, if you will. Or if it's out in the country, you know how you can set up further defenses, whether it be visual defenses, non-lethal defenses, signaling defenses, or even lethal defenses. So you do have a lot of different things that you can do with your local environment. And as you mentioned with those defenses, you can stage a lot of defenses to ease the areas of approach, whether it be snare traps, whether it be booby traps, things like that, or even just trying to make it more difficult to approach the driveway. For example, just staging some vehicles as pretty much a roadblock, to where not to where it's going to completely block the road, but pretty much it's going to be pretty much a approachment trap, to where they're going to have to move around those vehicles to slow their time of approach and giving you a chance to react. That way they can't just plow right through into your property with a vehicle or with a group of people. The next thing is going to be that it's very easy to stockpile your preps. As kind of an example right here, this is pretty much for my family, this is our 72-hour prep station right here. We have our water right down here and down below, pretty much enough for 4 people for 72 hours. Then we have a very variety of food. We have canned foods, we have vegetables, we have soup, we have beans, we have meat, Spam. We have a decent amount of MREs, we have rice, we have some of the Weiss Food Company food buckets and everything. And then we have supplies here for magazines, parts, medical supplies, survival gear. And in case there's a power outage or something like that, we do have lights, flashlights, and pretty much any type of things to give ourselves the ability to move from our house and all throughout it to get supplies together. And if we have to bug in, it's easy to take stuff from here and take it out to the vehicle to bug out. If we have to bug in, we have it right here all in one spot. So that's one of the things that's really nice and easy about bugging in, is you have a place to stockpile your preps and keep them all in one location. If you want to, or like I recommend, is keeping your stuff pretty much spread out. Like this right here, I said, is our 72-hour spot. We have spots all throughout our house with stuff to bug out, and then we also have stuff at our bug out location as well. The next thing is going to be that you can work towards self-sustainment, whether it be a water catchment system, solar power, whether it be having a garden, aquaponics. You have a lot of different varieties there to give yourselves the ability to sustain yourself for a long period of time. So that's one of the things that you can work towards that you can't when you're trying to bug out and stay on the road, is you have that area and that capability of resupplying your food. Along with if you are out in the wilderness, out in the woods, and you already kind of live at your bug out location, if you will, and bugging in there, which is a whole separate topic, but you do have the capability of going to hunt and bringing home food as well. The next thing is going to be that for those that are physically challenged, that don't have for example, that don't have the capability of physically bugging out, maybe you have elderly, maybe you are elderly yourself, and you can't just take the amount of effort that it would take to bug out on foot if there is that situation. Or as another example, say you have very small children that wouldn't survive the trek, things like that. Maybe you're physically disabled to yourself, to where maybe you're paralyzed and you're stuck in a wheelchair, but you still want to have yourself a decent amount of chance of survival for a decent period of time. Bugging in is kind of your option. Another thing is that you do have a higher amount of morale for your family and for your group if you're bugging in and not on the road. You have that familiarity, you have that capability of having that little bit of extra comfort of staying where you are living. Just to kind of give you guys a visualization of that. The last thing is going to be that it gives you the ability to avoid certain threats, whether it be illness, whether it be disease, whether it be the clogged and congested roads, whether it be other people, for example, out on those congested roads. Those are, and there's many more, but there's a lot of things that you can avoid by bugging in, especially if you have to bug in because there's pretty much unpassable roads to your bug out location. So now we're going to kind of get onto the cons list. For the cons list, one of the things that happens is if you aren't at that level of self-sustainment, once your stocks start running low, you're going to have to maybe leave and branch out beyond your area of bugging in, and may have to bug out, because once your stocks start running dry, then you're going to get into a very precarious situation, which is one of the things that's kind of nice about being bugging out and knowing more wilderness survival is that there's always food around you depending on the situation, so you can scavenge things from your surroundings, from the environment, and live off the land, if you will. But if you're bugging in, especially for those that are bugging in the city and suburbia, it can become very precarious for you, especially if you haven't tried to become a self-sustaining unit. The next thing is this is going to be one of the biggest hard hitters to bugging in, and that is going to be it's extremely susceptible to siege warfare, especially to use of airborne pesticides, smoke, and things like that, to where they can pretty much drive you out of the home but still leave a lot of the supplies intact. That's just one of the things that it comes down to, especially if you're pretty much running low on supplies and you have to leave the home. Maybe if, for example, you're pretty much reliant on your garden and your aquaponic system, and every time one of your people goes out and you're getting shot at and sniped at, that's going to be it's going to drop your morale, it's going to start decreasing your way of living, and especially if they have overwhelming firepower and overwhelming people, it doesn't take a genius to start to maneuver around and flank you while they're distracting you with a decoy. So just one of the things that really sucks about bugging in is that you're very susceptible to that type of attack. One of the other things that a lot of preppers don't think about, especially those that are living in suburbia and in the city, is the fire threat. And I know I've mentioned this before with my wildfires SHTF video, but fire threats are very common, especially whenever disasters happen. You see people start using a lot of candles. And what happens is candles can tip over. You can have oil lamps that tip over. Things can get caught on fire, and those fires can go on out of control. And whenever you don't have that immediate access to your emergency services, those fires can start to burn at an uncontrollable rate, and that can start leading from burning down an entire neighborhood. So if you're in that neighborhood and all of a sudden there's a fire come down, it's jumping house to house, at that point you can't bug in. You have to pretty much bug out and get what supplies you can and leave. Another thing is that as things happen and as things progress, it becomes much harder to bug out. To where as the situation progresses and as the threat increases and as people become more desperate, then once you start bugging out with all of your supplies, you're going to become a much more juicy target for marauders, if you will, or for people that are desperate for supplies. Another thing is going to be sanitation. As things keep building up, you're going to need ways of cleaning your tools, cleaning your silverware, and things like that. It's going to become very costly for your stockpiles as things progress and things go on. And this is going to kind of delve on to another major topic, and that's going to be your trash collection. Trash is going to start to develop and keep pretty much collecting as time goes on. So you're going to want to have a way of getting rid of that trash and moving it to another location, or having a way of pretty much making use of said trash. The last one is going to be the distribution crowd. Depending on the SHTF scenario and the situation, there are times where people could be going door to door and demanding to go through the houses and pretty much taking supplies that they need to and distributing that amongst the community. And what can happen there is that if you're bugging in, they're already there at your doorstep. They could be using police, they could be using federal forces, even the military, mind you, and at that point they're going to be taking what supplies you have and leaving you with very little. So that's kind of the pros and the cons list there. I want to kind of hear what you guys have to say for adding to the pros and cons, but now I'm going to kind of just jump right into the reasons to bug in. One of the big reasons is that if you're trying to bug out, and depending on the situation, there could be very restricted travel, whether it be military, law enforcement, or whether it just be the congested roads, or maybe the roads are impassable because of a major earthquake. A lot of reasons that would force you to actually come back and bug into your primary location. Another thing is short-term survival. Like I mentioned with this being our 72-hour kit here for the family, that there might be an SHTF scenario to where it's an SHTF scenario, maybe it's a natural disaster, maybe it's civil unrest, if you will, but there's not a reason that you have to fully bug out, where you could actually survive by bugging in, maybe if it lasts a week or so. The last one is going to be very hostile exterior environments. For example, there is a major drought, there's famine, there's disease, things like that, especially in the outbreak of a pandemic, if you will. You might want to bug in and avoid any type of exterior human contact than trying to bug out, because all it takes is, depending on the virus, depending on the flu or whatever, it could be airborne, so you want to try to keep yourself away from any type of that contact as possible. Or, for example, in case of Yellowstone blowing, then you have to deal with the ash, just a lot of different things. So that's kind of a few of the reasons why I think bugging in is a major thing for a lot of preppers to have on the scoreboard, and just to be able to keep on to thinking about. Another thing is going to be pretty much my philosophy for bugging in, and that's going to be pretty much the situation is really going to differ per the situation and for the reasoning on, like I mentioned before, why you're going to bug in. But pretty much my philosophy on it is that you want to pretty much keep it at that 72-hour mark. So if you don't know what's going on, or if you know what's going on, if your family can't survive past that 72-hour mark, you really want to debate on bugging out. So I really want to hear what you guys have to say about bugging in, what you guys are planning. Not too specific, I know, but just kind of thinking, do you guys prefer bugging in versus bugging out? Kind of depending on the pros versus cons list that I put forward for you. And what do you guys think on the bugging out aspect? Do you think that outweighs the bugging in versus the threats that you approach with bugging in? I'll be posting a follow-up video for bugging out for SHTF, but I primarily wanted to do this one first because for me, it's bug in first, then bugging out. So just because I have small kids, I have an infant and a toddler, so bugging out, especially if the vehicles are ill-usable, bugging out isn't a big option for me. So thank you. I really appreciate you guys watching, and remember, those that prepare for today survive tomorrow.